So in the other video, we discussed what it means to have an active lifestyle. And before getting into the mental health part, I want to quickly recap. Activity, as in being active, as in it's happening, as in it's alive, is the defining characteristic of life itself. It's on, and on means always on. Life as a whole is more than an activity, but activity itself, isness. It's more than just movement in a traveling sense from here to there, it's everywhere. Activity to life is the expression and expansion of itself. We, as extensions of life or living beings, benefit from aligning ourselves with how life operates because it means that we're simply being ourselves and doing what's natural to us. So how does this practically apply to our everyday life? In terms of physical activity, moving throughout the day. Incorporating movement into your regular activity because, in the sense that I just described it, movement is regular activity. It's in our nature to be active. And to be healthy, we must keep moving. Inaction in our bodies will be expressed in another way. Like I said, activity is always on, but not limited to our physical body. Unintentional inaction in our bodies may cause anxiety, brain fog, or overall mental instability. I only say unintentional because we can meditate and intentionally practice stillness or relaxation, and this can actually help the clarity of our mind. But by unintentional, I mean as a byproduct of being busy or being too distracted. So we have to move our bodies, naturally express ourselves regularly to keep ourselves balanced physically and mentally. That said, we have to use the mind effectively to get the best out of our bodies, as action is directed by the mind. So let's discuss mental health and mental activity. It's absolutely crucial for us to use our minds in a healthy, constructive way because the mind is always active. Even when the physical body rests, the mind is still on, whether it's intellectually, in terms of increasing our understanding, creatively, in terms of expressing oneself, or consciously in terms of coming into a fuller awareness of our reality. Consider learning. The formality in which you may imagine learning can actually be applied to our overall experience in life. A simple analogy would be school, in which you are taught lessons, you absorb information, and then are given the opportunity to express oneself from that expanded understanding. Through showing your work, you are demonstrating what you know. Life lessons work much in the same way. You gain wisdom and therefore grow in knowledge and are able to express who you are and your maturity through your way of life. This is the activity of the mind. As I mentioned, when I refer to being active, I mean it in terms of an expansion. Our mind itself can even help us understand this idea. As is in life, all activity is held within one mind. Consider any movement from here to there. Our physical body moving is being directed by the mind. Even in terms of a thought process in which thoughts seem to move, any of this activity is held within the one mind. Us then, as conscious beings who have been given the ability to think, when we are able to reflect on this fact, that is, that all activity is held within the one mind, we refine the activity within it. We increase integration and have a clear understanding of who we are. And because we understand ourselves better, we can express a fuller idea of who we are. We increase our capacity. Like any learning, our mind expands. It's important to mention here that our brain, which is constantly taking in information from our surroundings, can feel overwhelmed and overstimulated, especially in our modern world. However, we can remedy this by applying the mind in the way that it was intended. Thought, giving thought to a situation, applying our higher reasoning. How many of us have experienced something, perceiving the situation in a certain way, only to realize afterward we had overreacted? This is because our brain, relying on the senses, has become so accustomed to interpretation of reality through our physical environment, and because life is so expansive, unless we are actively acknowledging the interconnectedness of all things at all times, it's difficult to get a sense of the full picture of what's really happening. From this limited perspective, we seem to be at the hands of external influence and will continually perpetuate this feeling of restriction in our future interactions in life. However, when we're able to reflect, We can see situations in a new light, from a higher perspective, and free ourselves from the rigid frameworks that our previous confusions placed upon our lives. That's why it's so important to prioritize the practice of stilling our mind to ensure we are thinking as clearly as possible and not being confused by the limits of our perception. Therefore, when we use our mind with its intended purpose, thought, we are able to stretch beyond our perceived limits. As life does, we expand our capacity and are able to tap into hidden resources within ourselves. We reveal what we're truly capable of. We are, in fact, fully capable. To understand the fullness of our capability, let's again refer to life itself. Life, being active and holding all activity within it, knows it's able. It's done everything, so of course it's able. And the reason why life can continue to be active and to expand is because it's able. There's nothing stopping it. It is completely unrestricted, completely free. It is entirely accepting and open-minded. It is open to all possibility because all possibility that exists within it. It is entirely creative in its thinking. It's important to be able to recognize that as living beings, these are natural qualities for us to possess. And if they're healthy qualities for us to possess in terms of mental activity, then understanding this is key to our mental health. We live in a world today where mental health is a prevalent concern. And rightfully so. As I said, mental activity is the driving force behind physical activity, meaning our physical world will reflect the state of our mental world. The reason why creative thinking is essential is because a lot of our worries and stresses, our anxieties and our depressions come from feeling like we don't know what to do, feeling like we're stuck, and feeling as though nothing we do will matter. The situation we find ourselves in seems so overwhelming, and we feel as though we can't possibly have an effect on it. We feel swallowed up by the circumstances of our life, and in these feelings of fear, we either lash out, fight, or remain stagnant, freeze. The reason people feel this way is because they believe they've exhausted all of their options. They can't see the way. However, just because you can't see the way doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Like in life, just because you can't see something that's happening across the globe doesn't mean it's not there. This is where creative thinking comes in. This is the expansion that I've been mentioning. Now, I would like to invite you to release your tendency to think of the many options that may come to mind when I mention creative thinking. You may be used to thinking, oh, creative thinking? That means this option and this option and this option and so on. I just need to figure out another option to solve the problem. However, when you're already stressed out, this can seem like a chore. Like, I can barely think straight as it is, and now you're asking me to think of more options I can't see? You don't have to do this. And this is where creative thinking and faith go hand in hand. Creative thinking isn't about what the many options are. It's about the acknowledgement that whatever happens, whatever situation I find myself in, I can figure it out. Creative thinking is something that is done in the present moment. Without trying to predict what will happen, it's a readiness. It's the complete embracing of one's creative potential that can be activated whenever and wherever needed. And ironically, it's this empowerment that leads to the situation transforming. It wasn't so much about shifting into another situation, because in seeing the situation in a new light, the dynamic in the situation shifts itself. Therefore, it's not so much about the other options as it is about the fact that life will always find a way to make it work. There's a saying that sums it up well. Where there is a will, there is a way. Meaning, as long as you have life, there is a way forward. Life is a flow that knows no obstacles. This is the expansive nature of life. It's a flexibility, because it is narrow-mindedness and rigidity that can make us feel blocked. However, in physical life, we still balance this expansive activity with linear activity. Like, we move our bodies from place to place. We view our lives with a linear focus and set goals for ourselves. We do this to create structure, which is fine. It's just important to understand the nature in which life's activity operates so that we can incorporate this into our lives. Ultimately, it's about balance. As mental beings utilizing a physical body, it's important when we consider activity that we take into account mental activity. We can't just move physically and neglect our mental health. We may be doing things, but it's essential that what we are doing is being directed from a clear head, that we are moving with purpose. And in that mental activity, it's important that it's not limited to linear thinking and goal setting, but that we consider creative thinking and the ability to be flexible and to adapt, and the role that plays in our faith. Faith is what sustains us. It's what keeps us going. As I said, life being active means it's on, always on. And for it to be always on, it needs to be able to keep going. That's why faith is the underlying driving force behind any movement. We have to believe we can move to be able to move. Life does this with only reason to continue to do so. Since we are living beings, it's natural for us to do so in the same way. This way, we can use our mind in a healthy and constructive way and have its activity align with life's activity. And if we can align our activity with life's activity, then we can optimize our mental health.